Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Talking Disney podcast. This is so exciting today. We are doing a special bonus episode of the podcast. And today we are talking about the Pixar film Ratatouille. And this is a special patron request to be able to be on this podcast. If you are interested in becoming a patron and having the chance to select your own episode of Talking Disney, check out all the information in the description. But today, our patron Micah is here with his mom Stacy, and Micah and Stacy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're so excited. And Stanford couldn't make it today, so we have my very good friend Ryan here to come and talk about this movie. Thanks so much, Ryan, for coming on.
It's a pleasure as always, Rachel. Thank you for having me back on the Hidden Gems. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong show. Never mind. It's great to be here on Talking Disney.
That's right.
Got to get my names right.
Yes, Hidden Gems podcast is what we do every week. Talking Disney is usually just once a month. We've been doing a little bit more this last month or so, but yeah, so you can have your pick a podcast if you want to become a patron. But today we are talking about Ratatouille, and I'm really excited to do so. And Micah, so tell us a little bit about why you wanted to do this film.
Well, I really like Ratatouille. I've been watching it since I was young, so it was fun to be able to watch it again. There's a lot of fun parts, and I like the food theme to it. So yeah.
That's great. So this is one that you've watched since you were little?
Yeah. I'm not sure what age, but yeah.
Probably 3 years old.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Ryan, what about you? Do you remember seeing this in the theater, or what was your experience?
Yes, I do. This came out in, let me check my date. I believe it's 2007. Yeah. And so this was like at near the height of my Pixar fandom. It's gone through peaks and valleys, but this was at a high point. And this was like the perfect Pixar movie for me because it number one, it's one of my all-time favorite Pixar movies. It's in my top 2. And I think that Pixar has never truly made a bad movie. Mm-hmm. Cars 2 is debatable, but outside of that, Pixar has done nothing but just quality stuff from day one. But Ratatouille has always been one of my favorites because it was at the crossroads of several things and phases of my life, and it just converged all into one. And it's one of those fulcrum points that I've always come back to, and as we'll be talking about it, I will go into further detail.
Yeah, same for me. I saw it in the theater in 2007, and it's definitely, that was really peak Pixar. I think it was right around that time when they were just hitting everything out of the park, and I mean, I agree with you, Ryan. I don't think I would still rather watch any of their movies than almost any Illumination film. So so that's just my opinion there, but I think they haven't really made a terrible movie for me. So they were at a really, really, really rich time with Ratatouille, and this was their chance to get a different kind of film from Brad Bird. I mean, you think about his filmography, it's pretty impressive that he has everything from this to Iron Giant to Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible to The Incredibles. He has quite a variety of films. Micah, have you seen any of those other? Where would you rank this as far as compared to the Incredibles movies and some of those other? If you've seen any of those others,
I remember seeing the original Incredibles. I'm not sure if I don't think I've seen the sequel yet. So I can't really say on that.
Yeah.
Any of the Incredibles?
The first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't been watching the sequel yet, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What about you, Ryan? What do you think is where this fits in Brad Bird's repertoire?
I think this is one of Brad Bird's very best, and this is a guy who, maybe with the exception of Tomorrowland, has never truly, like Pixar, never truly made a bad movie. I love both the Incredible movies equally and wholeheartedly,
Mm-hmm.
and The Iron Giant is one of those movies that has gotten a great reputation now, but back then nobody really cared about it. But it has gotten better with age.
Yeah.
But where I would put it, like on a personal like Brad Bird ranking, I would put it near or at the top. It would just have to depend on my mood, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing I admit that I struggle with in this movie is I really do think rats are pretty gross. When it's just Remy, I'm fine. But when there's the group rat scenes, it's a little much for me. I admit it.
Okay, that I can acquiesce on, because I like when I saw some of those scenes, I was like Henry Jones from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I was like, rats? Yeah, Dad, big ones.
It's so gross. Uh, do you get Micah or Stacy? Do you get grossed out at all by the rats, or they're you're good?
I don't like them at all.
Yeah,
It really grosses me out.
They are pretty disturbing, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Not even a fan of even one, really.
yeah. I mean, most of the time, and they do stop to explain why he's walking on just his two paws, because most of the time that helps it kind of feel anthropomorphic enough, so it's not like realistic. But there are some times when I'm still a little grossed out. But yeah, so this movie, it started back in 2000 with a animator named Jan Pinkava, and he was the original director. He ended up getting producer and a story credit. He ended up getting a story credit on it, and so he was originally, it was kind of his thing, and then things weren't working, and so Brad Bird was brought in 2005. So it really didn't have very long to make this all, to basically restart practically the whole movie. And that's the thing that's so interesting, because people think that the Emperor's New Groove or Frozen or these these animated films that get retooled a lot, people think that that's really uncommon, but it's actually like not at all. It like happens all the time. And this was an example of one that got changed around a lot. And originally the plot was going to be quite different. And so yeah, it's an interesting thing to hear about the backstory of how things got changed around. And you got to hand it to Brad Bird for being able to figure everything out and be able to make it all work. Yeah, he changed it so he killed off Cousteau because he was going to be a bigger part, and he gave larger roles to Skinner and Colette. It's his fault that the rats look so realistic. It's Brad Bird's fault. But so it starts out the movie with it introduces Cousteau and Ego, and it you see him coming out of the window, and he says, "This is me running out of the house." And what do you think, Micah, about that beginning?
Well, I thought it was a good start. I think that I'm almost glad that they didn't start with Remy, but I think that it was a fun scene to begin with between the two.
What do you think, Ryan, about that?
I concur with Micah on that one. I think it's a really, really fun scene. It gets crazy near like the end of the beginning, where the old lady's got the gas mask and she's trying to like gas out Remy. I'm like, whoa, where did she find the time to buy that?
Yeah. Well, and she obviously doesn't care about her house very much. She's like blowing huge holes in her house. Crazy woman.
Yeah, and that shotgun is business. It's just like blowing like holes this big. I'm like, what kind of bullets did she buy? But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Micah, about that whole opening? And that is one of the parts that grosses me out a little bit is all the rats with the ceiling coming down, and there's just, I guess that's like my nightmare is having a whole ceiling full of rats.
I'm just glad they weren't snakes.
Oh my gosh.
Because that would have just been like, wraps. I'm out. I like, hey, live with the snakes.
Yeah. Oh, what do you think about that scene, Micah?
Well, it was one of my favorite scenes ever in Ratatouille. I remember, and I don't remember doing this, but apparently I did. Apparently, when all the rats came down and were running all over the place, I got up and ran all over the place. I don't know why, but apparently I did. I mean, it was there. There were so many rats. It was like crazy.
Yeah,
Like,
there are so many.
like I don't know. I didn't know how they even like got like I don't know. They're just like a lot of rats packed together.
I love how Stacy's over there like, oh yes, I remember.
Yeah.
I
Like,
had a video I could show it. It was good.
Yeah.
like Vietnam era style flashbacks. This is the end, my only friend. The end.
Yeah. So they decided on Patton Oswalt as the voice of Remy. And one of the weird things that they just chose is that they don't have any actual French speakers in the voice cast. And they didn't have Patton Oswalt do any kind of affectation to his voice at all, any kind of accent. And what do you think about that, Micah? Do you think that worked for his character?
I think it did. I don't have much to say when it comes to like casting wise, but I think that they did cast him good with the that
Mm-hmm.
actor. Yeah.
What about you, Ryan? Do you think that his voice fit the character well?
I think it did. I think all of the voices fit their characters good enough. I'm not one to stress about like certain nations representing like other nations. Like I don't worry about it too much as long as I think the talent is there, and I think the talent is more than represented in this cast. So I can definitely notice it, but I guess I'm a little more lenient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. I mean, especially when you're dealing with, you know, you're dealing with European and similar kind of Latin-based languages, as opposed to someone from the like United States pretending to be an Asian voice. I feel like that's a little more questionable, a little more tricky. But you know, obviously we would have in Beauty and the Beast, you have Jerry Orbach playing Lumiere, so it's not like it's unheard of. But I hear they're not. Some of the characters do pretend to have accents, like you have Janine Garofalo pretending to be Colette, and then you have Brad Garrett who's playing Gusteau, and that's both doing accents, but that's voice work. That's what they do. But I do appreciate the fact that with Pixar, it's always more important who's the voice as opposed to having a celebrity, which is what you sometimes get with DreamWorks or Illumination or some of those things. And you know, Patton Oswalt was pretty unknown at this point, and so to get him because he was right for the role, I think is pretty cool. It is important for that Pixar does that. And but yeah, it's an interesting choice. I mean, there's really not that many French accent characters for a movie set in Paris, I would say. So I thought that's kind of interesting. All right, so Remy has a highly developed sense of smell, and he is helpful around the colony because he can smell the rat poisoning. But other than that, he kind of drives everybody crazy in his family. And Micah, what do you think about that? Could you relate to that with Remy?
Yeah, I would say so. Roommate can definitely be a little smart aleck at times. Um,
Huh?
so I would say, yeah, that I would relate to that definitely.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have one brother, one sister. They're both older, so
Oh, okay, cool. So you can relate to a little bit to Remy and Emile
yeah,
as brothers in the movie. Ryan, you're an only child, correct?
Yes.
Yes. But can you relate a little bit to what Remy is going through being kind of different, and he has this highly developed sense of smell that makes him different from the rest of the clan, the colony.
Well, I was always different because up until like very recently, I was like a massive introvert. Like it was very
Mm-hmm.
difficult for me to make new friends or like put myself out there. And thanks to my YouTube channel, hashtag cheap plug, I've been able to kind of break out of my shell in there. And of course, doing Hidden Gems with you, Rachel, and this obviously has helped a great deal. But I can more than relate I can more than relate to Remy in that case. And in this part, it's like a couple of my favorite lines in the movie where he's like, clean, clean, and then he goes, cleanerific, cleanerino. And then he casually drops this line, close to godliness. And the rat looks perplexed and he's like, eh? And
Yeah.
Remy's like, which means clean, but it's just a move along, move
Yeah.
along. It's just that part just gets me every time, and it's just like 3 words, but I mean that just speaks to the writing in this movie, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the biggest strength of this movie is the writing. Stacey, what about you as a mom? Can you relate to both what Remy's feeling and also what Remy's dad is feeling?
Yeah, definitely. Remy wants to do what Remy wants to do, but as a parent, you want the best for your kid, and you think you know what that is. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I can definitely relate because I was very different from my siblings. They were my just older brother and my just younger sister were both way more sort of introverts and way more kind of homebodies. And I wanted to be out and I wanted to be socializing and I was just had a very different energy than both them. And I remember one time when I was like 15, 15 or 16, I I was so frustrated with them, and I said, I said, I'm the normal one. You all are the weird ones. And yet when I come home, I'm the weird one, and didn't go over very well. But I think the general sentiment was accurate. Uh-huh.
Well, we're all the heroes of our own story.
Yeah, that's right. So he admires humans. He says they don't just survive, they discover, they create. There's excellence, and this is Gusteau. There's excellence all around you. You need only be aware to stop and savor it. So that's a pretty nice definition of humans, I would say. Pretty flattering. But what about cooking as far as your own life, Ryan? What do you have a particular dish or a particular thing that you like to cook?
I make a pretty good pizza if I do say so
Mm.
myself. I've tried once upon a time to make like I would pull off a recipe from like Food Network or All Recipes, and I would try and do it, and it would just come off as like half baked and stuff. But my heart was always in the right place. I
Yeah.
was like, I'll just save that for watching Chopped and Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives and and a bunch of others.
My grandma used to always say when there's something like that would happen, she'd be like, just call it something else. Just give it a new name. And
Oh,
so,
this is
yeah,
unrisen
it's
bread.
it's blackened chicken, I guess, or whatever.
It's
I don't
pitch
know.
black chicken. And oh, by
Yeah.
the way, we're watching the Vin Diesel movie.
Yeah. So Micah, what about you? Do you like to cook?
I like making stuff in the air fryer. I know
Ooh.
it's like not necessarily cooking, but you're still making food that you can eat.
Uh-huh.
I like I like making popcorn shrimp, chicken nuggets, mozzarella sticks, and fries in there. Uh,
Mm.
it, we have a lot of home cooked meals too. I guess you can explain that more. The meals that we have.
Well, you know pretty well. You eat them. So I've kind of gotten the habit of creating a menu for the week, and so yeah, we eat at
Yeah.
home every day except for Fridays. Maybe we go out to eat, and then one day
Mm.
is leftovers because the meals are so big that typically that there's plenty of
Yeah.
leftovers. So yeah, we like food.
Yeah.
Mike determines if it's a good week when he looks at the menu and says the food's all really good food. So he says it's gonna be a good week. We have a good
Yeah.
menu.
That sounds good, man. That's the thing. Like kids don't realize how good they've got it. They got someone to make them all these meals and you don't have that when you get older.
Yeah, you got to do that all yourself.
I know.
And I'm sitting here the entire time thinking to myself, how does an air fryer work? Like that just like it's blowing my mind right now. Like how does the air fry something?
I've heard of them, but it's like a kind of but it doesn't dry it, right?
It just fries. It's wonderful. If you really,
Yeah.
I have bought so many appliances through the year, but this one is a good one, and I would really endorse it. So if it's something you're not a real into cooking, it would be a neat way to have really crispy fries and things like that. So yeah, it's a cool appliance.
I end up cooking in kind of fits. I will have like stretches where I'm really into it and I'm making lots of stuff and then I'll have times where I'm just like, oh, because it's kind of hard cooking just for yourself as a single, just because a lot of times you get sick of whatever it is that you've made. And I don't know, it's just not as satisfying when it's just for one person as opposed to cooking for friends or family or whatever. And so I don't know, it's an interesting thing. And a lot of times I'll end up, I'm my own worst enemy because I'll end up getting super into something and then I'll be like, oh, I don't want it anymore. And I've got all the ingredients or I've got tons left over. But I do have a pretty big freezer, so that helps a little bit with that. But I do enjoy the process of cooking. I like cooking a lot better than baking. I'm more just because baking requires so much patience. But they actually worked with a lot of they worked with a couple professional kitchens for the movie, and they actually worked with Thomas Keller, who is the founder and executive chef of the French Laundry, which is like one of the most famous restaurants if not the most famous restaurant in America. The French Laundry, I like to go there is many thousands of dollars for one meal. And it's kind of legendary if you get to go to the French Laundry. And so anyway, they worked with him, and it was Thomas Keller, Thomas Keller that created the Ratatouille that we see in the movie later on with the sort of thin slices, because typically Ratatouille is like a stew, but the way they made it in the movie is kind of different. And so I don't know, I thought that was kind of interesting that they got it all the way from the French Laundry. And I thought it would be fun to ask, have any of you ever been to like a kind of a fancy dinner, kind of similar to like a French meal kind of a thing?
When I was in Germany about 2 years ago, we went to this nice outdoor. Actually, no, it wasn't Germany. It was in Austria because we took a day trip to Austria. When we were in Austria, we went to an outdoor Austrian restaurant, and it was among some of the fanciest food we've ever eaten. And it's in that part of Europe, so by law you got to have pretzels at every table, and sure enough there were, and they were delicious. And everybody got like this pork dish with like the most delicious mashed potatoes I've ever eaten personally.
That sounds yummy. What about you, Stacey or Mike? Have you ever had a fancier meal?
I don't know if Micah has, because we're really casual.
Mm-hmm.
A steakhouse kind of, is what we would do.
Yeah.
I remember I took French in high school a really long time ago. And as a field trip, we got to go to a French restaurant. And I remember it being a fun experience, but it's definitely too far back for me to remember the food.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've had nicer meals here and there, but the fanciest meal I've ever had was at the one of the local bakeries that's sadly not in business anymore that I loved. This it was called Bake 360, and they had I'd gotten to be pretty good friends with them, and they had this special night where they brought in a friend chef of theirs, and you paid it was $75, which is a lot for me for especially for one meal. But they were like, I promise you it's gonna be worth it, it's gonna be really special. And so I was like, okay. And I actually did a whole blog post on it, so I have the meal, and it was pretty incredible. But they started out with butter poached red crab with citrus braised fennel and caviar, so that was exciting. And all these were like pretty small plates. That's the one thing about fancy food is they always end up hungry at the end because they're all so small. But then they had warm ricotta, cracked pepper, speck, lamb's lettuce, and olive oil. And then a seared diver scallop with celeriac puree, kumquats, and chervil oil. And then it was heirloom carrot risotto with pea shoots and espelette. And then pan roasted tres major, which is like a steak kind of. Fingerling potato confit, broccolini, and red wine demi-glace. And then they had a dessert, which was I can't remember what the dessert was, but anyway, that was a really fun experience. Everything was super fancy, and like I said, the dessert was a chocolate cake with shortbread, raspberry sauce, and clotted cream. So that was definitely the fanciest meal I've ever had. And it was fun. It's definitely not how I want to eat all the time, but for a fun experience, I recommend it if you get a chance. But one of the things I think that's outstanding in this movie is all of the food looks so good.
Yeah, it's like in any Studio Ghibli movie and in Ratatouille, the food looks just it looks like you just want to reach through the screen and grab some of it for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. Everything, like whether it's the soup or anything that they're cooking, I'm just like, It kind of reminds me of Studio Ghibli in that way. Whenever they have in a Studio Ghibli film, whenever they have food, it always looks so good. Would you agree, Micah, about the food?
Yeah, it does. It does look really good. It looks very rich, but I could tell that it's very tasty.
Yeah. And it's pretty exciting. They're going to be having a new Ratatouille ride at Epcot. Of course, everything got kind of delayed, but they're modeling it after the ride at Disneyland Paris, which has been very popular. And you actually get to you're in the place of Remy in the ride, and you can do a whole ride through it in Paris if you go onto YouTube. But it looks like it's going to be really fun. So that should be exciting. And they're opening a whole creperie to kind of go along with it at Epcot. So, if I ever get to go out to Disney World again, that should be really fun. And so then you have he ends up getting chased off of the colony, separated from his family, and they have him on kind of their water thing. He's on the cookbook, and he's goes through the sewers and through the water, and the water looked really good. I mean, especially for 2007, I thought still holds up. It looks really good.
One of the things that Pixar has done really well in like their past 2 or 3 years, like from Coco up through onward, is that they've made the inanimate objects look just tremendous. Like the worlds are just so immersive. But they were planting the seeds, like you said, as far back as Ratatouille. My one kind of nitpick is the entire time I was sitting there like, that is the most durable cookbook I have ever seen in my life, because as someone who has dealt with textbooks like from elementary through high school, like one rainstorm and that book is just it's kaput. And this
Yeah.
thing is like bopping around in sewer water, and it's like Teflon. It's like, yeah, I have to say no to that one, sir.
That's true, but the if you look at the difference between the water in the Incredibles in 2004 and in the water here, it looks so much better. And that was always kind of an Achilles heel of CGI animation is water and hair are like the two hardest things to do in CGI animation. But I think it was pretty impressive. Uh, what do you think about that animation, Micah?
I think that yeah, the water looked very good, which is surprising with rats in it.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
and I think that the cookbook is like a big object in this movie. I think that it looks very detailed, and that's
Hmm.
about. I wish that I'm not. It would be cool if you can buy that cookbook. But yeah, that would be really cool if you could.
Yeah, I wonder if somewhere in Disney World you can buy that anyone can cookbook. Probably maybe to go along with the new ride, they'll have something like that. I would bet. So then we have we do get the little explanation where he explains to Emil why he is only on two paws, which I appreciated that they took the time to explain that as opposed to just kind of having him walk that way. That was pretty clever on the part, and just a nice little addition because that's not the way the rats walk. Is on two paws, but it looks obviously you want that for the movie. Um, so then he ends up talking to Gusteau, and that becomes kind of this side character in the movie, and that I think that the film is pretty funny, and the whole idea of Gusteau being, well, I'm just a figment of your imagination, I think is pretty funny. Um, did you like that, Micah? Did you think that was funny?
Yeah, I think that he's like there, but then he gives good humor in like different situations. So that's and I think that I like that. I like how when Remy always gets upset, he comes out. So that's cool.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Ryan, about the humor in the movie?
Yeah, this movie is just it's very funny, and props to Brad Garrett for doing an excellent French accent. Because Brad Garrett has a very distinct voice. He's like, Raymond, Mom said not to do that.
Yeah,
Like
that's right.
you could pick out Brad Garrett's voice even if you were deaf. Like he has such a unique voice, but in here it's like it's almost unrecognizable. He's like, the kitchen is clear. This is your chance. And that was very bad, but I'm sure everybody at home understands my point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize, honestly, that it was Brad Garrett until I was researching for this. And because his regular voice is so different. So he did a great job, I think. And I just like that whole conceit. I think it's so funny. I'm just a figment of your imagination. Like, what?
Yeah, there's
Oh,
also the humor also works excellently with Michael Giacchino's score. I'll touch on that in a
yes,
little
that's a
bit
good
when we
point.
get to when Remy cooks for the first time. And then the humor, like some of the funniest scenes in the movie, at least for me, are when Colette is explaining all the shady histories of the chefs, and Skinner's backstory constantly changes, and we'll touch on that later. But just the mixing of Giacchino's score and just the writing is just it's like an elegant dish in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that they make sure to be clear in the movie is that a cook makes, a thief takes. So they go to quite a bit of effort to make sure that that Remy always knows that he's not stealing, that they're either eating garbage or that he is making it somehow better in some way, so that kind of justifies him taking the food. But that, that's kind of important to the plot, especially towards the end when you get the betrayal. At least Linguini feels betrayed because they're stealing is the idea, which I think is kind of an interesting try to kind of give some moral like weight to the story. I thought that was interesting that they do that. And I also think that Paris looks so beautiful in this movie. The way, and that's saying something because, like you said, Micah, it's coming from the point of view of a rat, and I love the way it captures the city of lights. I think it looks so beautiful. Does it make you want to go to Paris, Micah?
Yeah, I think that it would be really cool to go to Paris. It's one of my dream places to go, and I think that they did a really good job of portraying the city in this movie.
So
Yeah.
I have to share here. So when he was little and watched this all the time, anytime he would see a picture of the Eiffel Tower, he would shout out Ratatouille.
Oh,
So
that's so
Eiffel
cute.
Tower is Ratatouille.
Yeah, did you get to go to Paris when you were in Europe, Ryan?
No, we did not. It was just a strictly Germany and Austria trip. But
Okay.
I have like a short list that I want to travel to, and Paris is among one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm incredibly boring in that I want to go see the Louvre. I want to go see
Oh,
the Arc de Triomphe, the Eiffel Tower, obviously,
yeah.
and just do like what Maggie Grace was going to do in Taken, just stay in museums all day. Like that's a wonderful day for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. I would love to just go to all the markets and the cafes, and yeah, it sounds like live my own little Sabrina. Have you ever seen that movie? Come back reborn. I've been to Europe before. The last time I've been to Europe was in 2016, I think. I went to Spain. Um, but I've never been to Paris, so I would like to someday. That would be really fun.
Well,
Uh,
Rachel, when our podcast takes off and we go to Cannes, we'll make a
oh,
point. We'll make a point of going there.
you're not kidding. That is like my dream. Uh, and I would love to go in. I think in Paris they have every year in normal years they have something called the Annecy Film Festival, which is all animation I think in Paris. It's in France, I know for sure, and that's definitely a dream of mine is to go to the Annecy Film Festival. But who knows if we'll when we'll be going to film festivals at all.
That's your nirvana right there.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, he ends up at Gusteau's, and I really like that whole sequence when he's getting to Gusteau's, and there's all of the various Parisians that he passes on the way, with like the couple arguing and that kind of stuff. I think is funny. It's like a little Easter egg that you get to have, and then he ends up at Gusteau's, and you see Linguini coming in, and he's supposed to be just the janitor, whatever, and he has a letter from his mom that he gives to Skinner, and he starts to mess with the soup, and Remy's like, what are you doing? And he ends up fixing the soup, and gets the great reviews, and so that kind of gets our story going. And I have to say, especially now that we're starting in fall, there's nothing better than like a really good bowl of soup with like some crusty bread.
Oh, yes.
I'm really getting hungry. uh, yeah, and what do you think about Linguini as a character? What do you think, Micah?
Um, I think that he's. I think that you can see that he's clumsy. I think that you can see that. But I think you can see that he has a lot of intelligence, and that his character. Um, I think once Remy comes in, his character starts to develop because, a lot of people would think, why would I take care of a rat, and like why would I watch over him? I think that um, having his character do that makes him more likable character. So that's what I think.
What do you think, Ryan?
I think I like his evolution across the movie because he starts off, and he's I don't know how old he is in this movie. Would it be too much to venture that he's like in his mid-20s, maybe late 20s?
I always figured he was younger than that, but I don't think they ever say
Well,
how old he
let's.
is.
I always thought he looked like in his 20s,
Yeah, I think in his 20s. Yeah.
but when he starts out in the movie, he's like Micah said, he's incredibly clumsy. He's like falling all over himself. But by the end, he turns himself around and becomes a little bit refined, and all the bumps and the bruises along the way. So I like what they did with his character, and I like the fact that Brad Bird just didn't make him, oh, he fell over again, wah wah. Like, no, they didn't do that. They actually treated him with respect, and I thought that was just that was a great decision.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, some of the antics with the pulling of the hair and in like him being, I mean, especially when he's literally asleep, that's maybe that's a lot. But I still think overall their relationship is really sweet and a fun friendship, and it works for me. And his relationship with Colette is really cute, I think. So I like that. And Colette, like I said, she's voiced by Jeannie Garofalo. I think it's a kind of a fun character because you really don't have very many female characters in Pixar that have any kind of weight to the story at all, and here she actually does matter to the story, and with her and Linguine and everything, it's I like her. I think she's funny, and I think the whole cast in the kitchen is funny. I particularly like the sous chef with the thumb with the
I
deadly thumb.
I killed a man with this thumb.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Micah? Do you have a favorite of the people in the kitchen?
I think that Colette's pretty funny. I like her. I think that I like her. I like her. I like her attitude. I think that it helps Linguine, I think, become a better person too. I think that Remy and Colette both contribute in different ways, like to make Linguine a better person. So that's kind of what I think.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that that he that she feels sort of competitive over with Linguini because she's had to work so much harder as a female chef than in here she sees this guy kind of traipse in with no experience and just be randomly great at it. And so I think you get some interesting dynamics there. One of the interesting things is that Remy and his brother Emil is actually voiced by Peter Sohn, who is the director of The Good Dinosaur. He's actually an animator, and so it's kind of interesting because you have in the Incredibles you have of course Brad Bird voicing Edna Mode, so sometimes they go in house for these characters, which is kind of fun. Um, so Ryan, what do you think of Chef Skinner as kind of our villain of
well,
the movie?
well, I just want to give a bit of a tribute because Skinner was voiced by Ian Holm, and he passed away earlier this year. May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
He was among other things, and he was in Aliens and in the Lord of the Rings movies, and he was always one of my favorites. So rest in peace to him. And he does a great job as he always does. But if I had to describe Skinner to somebody who had never seen this movie, I would say the Napoleon complex, like stuffed into a human body. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty much all he does. And not only that, but it's also revealed that he's kind of a scummy character. Like when he takes over, like he really doesn't do anything new. He just goes through the motions, and all he really cares about is making his frozen food stuff. And just it's just I just never I always liked that he was voiced by Ian Holm, but in order to make me not like him, the movie did succeed.
Yeah, I mean, he's under suspicion because he wants to make Gusteau, selling Chinese food and burritos and stuff like that. He wants to kind of dilute Gusteau's name, but he's I think a fun villain because he's not really like a villain. Like most people would freak out about all these rats. And the more of a conspiracy theory kind of develops, the more sort of humorous he is. And so I think he works quite well as a villain character. Of course, you have Ego, who's also kind of sort of a villain character in the story.
We'll get to him.
Yes, we will. And so I think he's a lot of fun. I enjoy his character in the story. And of course, he starts to worry that Linguine is actually Gusteau's son. So that's kind of a reveal through the story. And so he gets does like a DNA test. And so he starts to get concerned about that. And so then we have an interesting scene between Remy and his dad, where his dad shows Remy all the rat killer and in the shop, and he says, this is who we are. This is our nature. And Remy says, we can change is also a part of nature. He says the part that we can influence, and it starts where we decide. So I thought that was pretty interesting kind of layer to the story of, yes, there's certain things that are part of our nature, but then there's other stuff that we can change as a part of our nature. Micah, what did you think about that scene?
I think that's interesting to show the relationship between Remy and his dad. I think that when they get isolated, I think that it shows it's sad, but then again, I think that there's a lot of interesting lines that mean big things in this movie, and I think that was definitely one of them. Also, I have something to say about Chef Skinner.
Okay, yeah, please.
He definitely got on my nerves at times, but I think that he kind of redeemed himself later on. But then again, like he was just kind of like a little bit too bossy. So that's what I thought of him.
Yeah. Ryan, what do you think about that scene? It talked about nature, and can you change your nature?
Whenever I think of about that scene, I think of the Serenity prayer, where it says, "Oh God, grant me the wisdom to change the things I can," and I can't remember the rest. But then there's another verse, and then it says, "and the wisdom to know the difference." And I always think of that prayer and that scene because Remy has recognized that he cannot change the fact that he is a rat, but he can change the fact that he can become a great cook, and he has the wisdom to know the difference. And I know that this is getting way too nerdy for this Disney podcast, but it's something that I've always thought of whenever I've thought of that scene.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good. And yeah, it's an interesting thought because there is something to embracing who you are as by nature, but there's also something about embracing change as well. So I think it's kind of interesting. And so yeah, he ends up getting reunited with his family, and he says, and his dad says to him, what do you have more than family? And he's kind of choosing to spend this time with Linguine as opposed to being with his family, which I think is kind of an interesting thought, that that obviously family is super important, but it's also important that I think at a certain point that you kind of form your own identity in separation from your family, and that's kind of where Remy's experiencing. I think that that can be hard sometimes to kind of have that like separation where you realize, oh, I'm different from my family in this way, or I think differently, and but still like respecting your family. Because there are times when Remy kind of is a little bit rude about his family, and I think he learns through the course of the movie to be respectful, of to value everybody, and so I think that's an important lesson that he learns. Um, what about you, Ryan? What do you think?
I agree with you, Rachel. I think it's a very important lesson.
Yeah. Micah, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I think that it shows the difference between differences and similarities between a family and a passion. For Remy,
Mm-hmm.
food cooking is his passion, and I think that that's explored throughout the movie. And helping Linguini with not only food but also becoming more of like a likable character causes him to, I don't know, again like take distance himself from his family and take Linguini's side over it. But I think he has a good balance by the end where all of his family are helping out with like cooking, and he is able to have a good relationship with Linguini. So I think it was very important to put that line in there and explore that like two sides from his
Mm-hmm.
life.
Yeah, I think so too. And so you do get the pretty over the top scene where literally Linguini is asleep, and he's operating. Remy's operating him, and you get the conflict between him and Colette. And Colette slaps him, and but then they kiss, and so that's pretty fun kind of screwball comedy kind of antics going on with that. Uh, did you like that romance, Ryan?
Yeah, I did. And one of the things that nobody really talks about is the kind of slapstick nature of the movie when Remy and Linguini are going through. I'm gonna call it a training montage. I'm sure it has a better name in context, but I always thought of it as a training montage when they're going through the hair pulling routine thing, and they finally get like something right, and it was a great moment. And so side row to side, I thought it was a very organic romance because Colette started off, and I'm man enough to admit this, Colette kind of terrified me when I was younger because she had the line of, keep your station clear or I will kill you. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
remind me not to make you mad, please. So whenever I wouldn't clean up after myself, my inner Colette would be like, keep your station clear or I will kill you. And so
Yeah.
take care of that.
Yeah. Micah, what do you think of Colette? Do you like her?
Yeah, I do like her, and I like her relationship with Linguini because Colette can be pretty threatening at times throughout the movie. So I think that having that as like a fierce and then shy romance, I think is pretty nice. So
Yeah, and there starts to be kind of a rivalry between Remy and Colette. Of course, she doesn't know that, but he starts to feel kind of competitive of her, and Linguini starts listening to her more than he's listening to Remy, and so that creates that kind of competition, and we get the point where Linguini is taking credit in the press for everything, and so then there's that divide, and that's when uh, he lets the rats basically like steal from Gusto's, and they have the Skinner sees them, and Linguini is very upset. And so you get that kind of conflict going, which I think works and drives you into the story. And this is also the first time that we get to really meet Anton Ego, and voiced by Peter Gallagher, and I mean Peter.
Peter
Sorry,
O'Toole.
he's voiced by Peter O'Toole, and so yes, Ego is a really great character, and I think that he is key for really my love of this film. I think I would just kind of like it, but I love Ego as a character so much, and especially as a film critic, it's something that I really think about a lot. Is and we'll talk about a little about Ego's speech, his review, but What do you think, Ryan, about Ego?
He's an awesome character. I mean, Peter O'Toole was one of the greatest actors of all time. He was T.E. Lawrence, and just he was awesome in so many movies.
Yeah.
And I was privileged to be introduced to him through this movie. And Ego's introduction may be one of the best in Pixar history, because he's sitting there typing at his typewriter, and his little assistant walks in, and he is just like, "What is it, Ambrister?" And the guy's like, Gusteau's, and Ego's like, "Finally closing," and Ambrister's like, "No," and he's like, "More financial trouble," and Ambrister's like, "No," and then Ego, losing patience, is like, "Announced a new line of microwaved egg rolls. What? Spit it out." And I'm just like, he's over the top in all the right ways, but also serious in the right ways, and only Peter O'Toole could provide that.
Yeah, he says, if I don't like it, I won't swallow.
Yeah, that's a wonderful line. And of course, ego is a part of my favorite Pixar moment, which we will more than certainly get to, I imagine. But
yes.
But
yes.
We'll get there.
Micah, what do you think about Ego as a character?
Well, I really liked him. He starts out as like a little bit, do you like him? Do you not? But then I think that he's funny, and I think that he has one of the best lines in the entire movie. I think that it shows that like he takes, his food eating job seriously, and I like that type of personality. So I think that he's a really good character, and I think that he has a lot of passion with him.
Yeah. Yes. And so he's going to come and do his big review, but they all get in fights, and that's when Linguine admits about the little chef, about Remy, and the whole staff leaves, including Colette. And that's when the rats come in, and they do get cleaned in the steamer, but it's still it's a lot. All these rats. I mean,
at my former job in a movie theater, we had something very similar to what you see in the movie. It's a pretty powerful cleaner, but not enough to do something like that.
Yeah. And so it's pretty gross, but whatever. You're invested enough by this time that you make it, you just go with it. And then we get the just great scene when when Ego is eating the ratatouille, and it takes him right back to his childhood, because they, even Colette says, "Oh, that's a peasant dish. Why would you make that?" And they do, and I think that's such a good scene when it's all basically kind of it's done as sort of one take of him going back to his childhood. Ryan, what do you think about that?
This is my favorite scene in any Pixar movie ever. Like, there are a few that are like in my top 5. I don't have the list ready off the top of my head, but among others include the scene in Up where Carl is reading through the photo album and sees all the photos that Ellie took, and it ends with, "Now it's time for your adventure," and then like my heart just melts every time I see that. And like there are a couple of others that I'm surely missing, but this scene with Ego is my favorite Pixar scene of all time, because he takes he takes some of the ratatouille, he brings it to his mouth, and Anton eats it, and his eyes go big, and you flash back to the scene where he skinned his knee, and his mom makes him that soup, and it flashes him back to his childhood. His pen drops off the table, and he is just utterly speechless. It has no dialogue. It has no grand music. It's animation at its finest, like then and there. And there are a lot of great scenes in Pixar, but like that's the king of the mountain for me.
Yeah. And I mean, that is a true experience that you have, that you'll have when you get to be, Micah, when you get to be an old person like myself, and you have something that reminds you of your childhood. It's a powerful thing. And I feel like sometimes nostalgia has gotten kind of a dirty word of, oh, like you just like that because of nostalgia. But when you really do kind of tap into your childhood and those warm memories, that it can be a powerful thing. I don't know. I mean, Micah, what do you think about that whole scene and how it's done?
I think that I like seeing flashbacks. I like seeing backstories, even if
Yeah.
it's like a main character. I think that it's important to show it because it makes you like the character more. It makes you understand what they've gone through, and it gives you a glimpse of their past and how their actions are controlling the present. So that's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they end up showing Ego, the little chef, showing him Remy, and then we get his review. And I thought, I've never done this before in Talking Disney, but I thought it would be fun to actually listen to his review because it's real. This is my favorite part. As much as I love the flashback, as a film critic, this is something I really value, and so I thought it would be kind of fun to watch it together. Here we go. Let's watch it.
In many ways, the work of a critic is easy. We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and their selves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to read. But the bitter truth we critics must face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designating it so. But there are times when a critic truly risks something, and that is in the discovery and defense of the new. The world is often unkind to new talent, new creations. The new needs friends. Last night I experienced something new. An extraordinary meal from a singularly unexpected source. To say that both the meal and its maker have challenged my preconceptions about fine cooking is a gross understatement. They have rocked me to my core. In the past, I have made no secret of my disdain for Chef Gusteau's famous motto, "Anyone can cook," but I realize only now do I truly understand what he meant. Not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere. It is difficult to imagine more humble origins than those of the genius now cooking at Gusteau's, who is, in this critic's opinion, nothing less than the finest chef in France. I will be returning to Gusteau soon, hungry for more.
So you've heard that. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
I mean, yeah, that's... For a long time, I used to think like movie critics were kind of like Anton Ego. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But the more I thought about it, the more it could have been so easily turned into like a gross caricature of the guy who's not impressed by anything and always looks down on the common man. And at the same time, Ego is presented as someone who was like that, but then in his line when he says, and a creator can come from anywhere, like he finally realizes, oh yeah, and it was like an aha moment. And to put the period at the end of the sentence, I think that's the beautiful part.
Yeah, this is something that I always try to remember as a film critic, is that even if something I don't like they've created something. What have I created? Nothing. And so I need to respect that. And you know, I will occasionally do a rant if I feel like something is offensive for some reason, or I really, really dislike it. But I try to keep it pretty rare because I think that, again, they have created something I have not. And so At the very least, there's almost always something positive that you can say about a production. Uh, Almost always. Sometimes some filmmakers make it harder than others, but I mean, and also they couldn't have designed a better way to ensure good reviews of this film is by putting this in. And I love the whole idea of being in defense of the new, that the new needs friends, and that we as critics sometimes get the opportunity to introduce people to things that are different and new. And that's where the job really is great, is that you have a chance to, when I tell people about something like Your Name or Wild Rose, or movies that I love that they probably wouldn't have heard about aside from me, or obscure animation or things like that, that's where the job is great and exciting and fulfilling. So I love that this whole speech for both of those things. It reminds me to stay grounded, and that yes, these people, maybe they made something I didn't like, but they made something. And also to be in defense of the new is really important. Mike, what do you think about that whole scene?
Um, I liked it. I think that I've always liked narrations, so I like what they did with this scene. I think that, like you said, it's important when it comes to film critics, and I wouldn't know anything about it, but I'm glad that they took the time to put this, to bring this to life, and I think that it was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great way to basically end the movie, and they end up, the things get shut down because of the rats, which makes sense. And they end up doing their own new cafe, which is fun. So that's the end of our movie. I think it's really a sweet movie with heart and a beautiful animation, great voice work. Of course, won the Oscar that year, and I really enjoy it. So I'm grateful that you picked it for us to review for Talking Disney. So Micah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you had a good time. Well, Ryan, do you have any closing thoughts about this film?
I'd actually like to read a quote from the great Roger Ebert from his review of Ratatouille, because you were talking about it, Rachel, and I just had a thought. And this was from his closing paragraph. And he says, "Every time an animated film is successful, you have to read all over again about how animation isn't just for children, but for the whole family, and even for adults going on their own." And he ends it with, "No kidding," in an exclamation point. And I think that sums up most, if not all, of my feelings about the success of this movie right then and there. That and I mean, to take a quote from the GOAT, as they would say.
Yeah, you can't go wrong there. Very good. All right. Well, Micah, do you want to tell people about your channel and what you do?
Yeah, so my channel is Libby Studio, and I pretty much do all reviews, books, movies, TV shows. Right now, I have a podcast called Zooey Mama, which is all about a dad kid talking every book, every movie, and different questions that people ask me and I answer them. I also am talking about Riverdale Season 1, which is a lot of fun. I do a lot of movies, and I recently joined the Movie Nerds Club, which is with Rachel, Ryan, and a couple of their friends. And that's a lot of fun to be able to join that if you really like movies. And then recently I had an interview with Rachel and Ryan where we talked about our channels and we talked about the Disney live action remakes. And that is on my channel now. You can go check that out at Web Studio. Overall, I really do enjoy my channel, and I put a lot of work into it, so I really enjoy doing the videos.
It's awesome. I'll have all of that in the description section. Y'all should check it out. And Ryan, what about you?
They can find everyone can find me on Facebook, Twitter, thread's starting to go out, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. And then, of course, there's my YouTube channel, RyanCam Movie Reviews. Today, we're recording this on a Tuesday, which means yesterday my episode of the AFI project, where I talk about the treasure of the Sierra Madre, dropped. Tomorrow is going to be my episode on Dr. Strangelove. That's going to be a lot of fun. And the AFI project is going full steam ahead throughout the remainder of the year. I've got like 50 something movies left to review in that series. So I've got a lot of ground to cover there. And then for this October, I've got my big Halloween series coming out, which I'll be teasing. And so, yeah, it's a great time to go over there and subscribe.
Yeah, check that out. Again, that'll also be in the description. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. I'm one of those critics that we were talking about. And also you can find me at the Hallmarkies podcast. We have so much fun over there. We're getting ready for Christmas, if you can believe it. It's going to be before we know it. So it's going to be very busy time for us, but make sure you check that out. And again, check out the Patreon if you want to have your chance to pick a movie for Talking Disney or anything that you want. You can, by becoming a patron, like Micah, you can come and do this and have so much fun. So check all of that information in the description section. And we also have our merch store. Make sure you like and subscribe to the video. And so thank you again. And thank you to Stacy for joining us and supporting Micah. I think that's really awesome. And so thanks again, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.